Well guys, I'm back in my lovely Tonga Green L322. I'm obviously biased, but genuinely every time I see this car, get to drive it, whatever, it just makes me smile and I'm so happy it's mine. Oh Lord, that is a large truck. Well, I'm not sure if I put the video out before this or after this, but this thing made it on its, I guess, maiden large voyage or long voyage, whatever you want to say. Yeah, it did a trip to Scotland, which I think was about there and back about 7 hours. I don't know how many miles it was, to be honest. I should know that a little bit better off the top of my head. But you know what? This thing did absolutely amazingly up until the last half an hour of the trip. Bless it. I felt really sorry for it because genuinely all weekend I've been saying to my friends, like, I'm so surprised how well it's done, which I think is a bit mean because I should have probably given it a bit more credit. But as Range Rovers do, you know, it threw a little curveball, and yeah, just after Lancaster, the heavens well and truly opened, and I'm talking biblical weather. Like, I couldn't see probably like 15 feet in front of me. It was just rain, the wipers going absolutely mental, and yeah, about 20 minutes after that, I was looking at my speedo because I had it on cruise control set at 70. And I just kept seeing the needle of the speedo just doing this. I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, what's going on? Because the engine sounded fine. It wasn't over revving. It wasn't doing anything. Then all of a sudden, we're still doing 70. My friend who was sat there just looks at it as well, and it just goes like this. Whee! And before you know it, the speedo says we're doing 150. Still doing 70, obviously. And then it just drops to 0. All the time we're still doing the exact same speed, and then we got a hill descent control fault and air suspension fault. And I don't know if it's just me, but genuinely when there's an air suspension fault and it doesn't work on this car, it is rather terrifying because the steering wheel becomes so light and even the slightest movement of the steering wheel just wobbles the car. So that was a little bit terrifying, well, not terrifying, so that was a little bit worrying for a few minutes. But despite what I've just said, the car actually felt fine apart from the steering. But just to be on the safe side, to make sure there wasn't anything else going to happen, we quickly sort of pulled over at the nearest services. I handily brought my diagnostic tool with me, which I think I've said before is genuinely really useful. It's not one of the Gap ID ones, it's Top Don, which sounds quite dodgy. Sounds like it's sort of produced by the Sopranos or something, but yeah, it's actually a pretty decent piece of kit. 150 quid, and it does all my cars. Like, it's got every single brand within reason on there. And there might be some limited functionality with it in respect to the Range Rover, but for what I needed it for in that moment, it was really useful. So all it said, which is what I thought was the issue, was a wheel speed sensor. I had it on my Audi A4 a few years back in torrential rain. I think just when there is that much water finds itself anywhere, and you know, I think we just had a bit of water ingress on one of the wheel speed sensors. So I tried clearing the code, it didn't work because obviously it was still very fresh. And all I ended up doing was giving it a few days on the drive, letting it dry out in fairly nice weather, and cleared it. I've driven it, driving it now, and it's not come back. So yeah, I think it has probably gone away. It might happen again at some point, which if it does, I'll probably just replace it, but no faults at all since then, which is really good. So we're not going to give her an A star for that trip. We'll give her an A- because she did give us a little bit of a scare, but it made it there and back, and I'm really happy with that. So yeah. Anyway, back to the point of this video. One of the main reasons I opted for this particular car, it definitely wasn't just purely because of the fact it was Tonga green and had a tan interior, was because of the TD6. Now, I know it gets a lot of hate online, but one of the main reasons I opted for that is because of all the engines that came with the L322, it is probably the kindest to work on. If you're new to the world of mechanics like me, this is probably the best combination Range Rover L322 you can get if you want to look after it yourself. Anyway, back to the point of this video. I think I've said it before, but one of the main reasons I actually opted for this particular car, it definitely just wasn't because it was Tonga green with a tan interior, was because it actually had the TD6 engine, which does get a lot of hate online, and I can kind of see why, but for my purposes, it suited it really well. This isn't a daily driver for me. It gets ad hoc use for weekends, and funnily enough, the little one absolutely loves this car, genuinely in love with it. All she does is sort of sit on the windowsill outside. That sounds wrong. All she does is sit at the windowsill next to the sofa and points at the Range Rover going, Range Rover! So yeah, I think she's going to be quite cheesed off if I ever sell this. But yeah, it gets ad hoc use at the weekend with the family, trips like I did to Scotland, tip runs, and just kind of when I want to go out in something a bit different. So it's not being used that much, and because of that, I didn't really want the huge sort of maintenance bills that kind of go with them. I say huge, that's probably a bit of an overstatement, but I wanted something that I could tinker with myself and not have to sort of send it to a garage once or twice a year to have a service and a bit of work done. I wanted to really do it myself. Now, one of the things that's put me off in the past about self-maintenance is the cars I've had, because I don't really want to be tinkering myself with a 30, 40 grand car, because A, I might cock it up and it'll cost me a fortune to do, and B, it's going to impact resale value, because whoever buys said car is going to be quite cheesed off if Muggins over here has been looking after it. And it's also that age of a car where it's not really going to go down in value much more if I did want to get rid of it. And equally, it's not the most desirable L322 out there, so it's not really going to impact sort of residuals if it does appreciate anyway. You know, it's never going to be one of these ones that's worth 20, 30 grand. And the more and more I thought about it, this just seemed like a really good project to kind of really jump in and maintain it myself completely. And that's what I'm doing, and that's where we begin with today. So I'm quite fortunate that this actually has a pretty good service history anyway. All the kind of biggie jobs within reason have been done. It's had the rusty arches redone and repainted. The tailgate I think has been refurbished, although I've not seen an invoice for it, but it looks immaculate. So I might have just looked out and had one that isn't really that rusty, who knows. So yeah, the arches have been done. It's had its gearbox fairly recently serviced. I think that was 2 years ago. It's had its trans oils done, diff oils done. I think it's had its new brakes, new calipers in the last few years, brake pipes. It's had a lot of work done in the last few years. So there isn't a huge amount of maintenance that I need to do to kind of get ahead of the curve. But the one thing I really wanted to do is almost just get the basics nailed first. And one of the most basic things is engine oil. I think the last time this had its engine changed was maybe 21, 22 from the service history. It's not done a huge amount of miles in that time, but look, oil is fairly inexpensive. Although the ones I bought, I ended up having to buy 12 litres, so that was quite expensive. I know it only takes 9, but in my head it's cheaper to buy 12 than it would be to buy 9 within reason, because at least I've got 3 litres left to, you know, top up. Hopefully I don't need to top up, but anyway, that's where we are. So yeah, I just thought, while I've got a bit of time, let's start ticking off a few of these maintenance items, and yeah, let's give her an oil service. So that's what we're doing today. We're going to give her a nice, fresh drink of Castrol Edge. Sorry to really bore you about oil, but I've opted for 5W40. I think the standard is 5W30 for this engine. I've gone for 40 purely because it's done 130,000 miles now, so kind of a more viscous. My chemistry teacher would be proud with that word. But from what I've been told, thicker oil, higher mileage engine, good. So that's what we're going with today. So we're just off to Halfords to pick up our engine oil, filter, and I think we're also going to do an air filter. I was going to do a cabin filter as well, but they didn't have one in stock. So yeah, it's kind of a minor service, sort of, not really, just an oil service. But yeah, this is kind of the start of the maintenance journey for her. My kind of main thinking is, you know, do a bit of work on her now, and maybe in 6 months' time, maybe a year's time, whatever, I'll total everything up that I've had to do myself or with me and my friends, and kind of do a sort of summary of what it's cost to run in 6 months or a year's time, so you guys can get a pretty decent picture of, you know, what the kind of running costs are if you do it yourself. And what I might also do is I might speak to a mechanic friend beforehand and kind of get him to compare what it would have cost at a shop rather than doing it yourself. And also, yeah, I'm just kind of using this as a bit of a project and a bit of a journey for you guys to come along the way and potentially laugh at my mechanic skills, but also just sort of show you that, you know, yes, these are big, old cars that can be complicated, but hopefully this one should be quite friendly to the basic mechanics like myself out there. Fingers crossed anyway. As well as the oil change, I want to have a quick look at potentially another issue. So when I bought the car, and I think I've referenced it in another video, the car made a noise at idle that was kind of like a like it sounded a bit like a vibration, but also it really sounded like an air compressor, like when an air compression tank is kind of refilling again. But when I spoke to the guy I bought it off, he said, oh, on the flexi bit of the downpipe from the turbo, I think it's corroded and it's almost like vibrating through the exhaust system, which is why you can probably hear it at every area of the car, particularly the back, either at the right-hand side or the left-hand side. So yeah, while we got the car up in the air and a lot of room to work with, I'm going to have a quick nosy at that to see if it is really corroded, because I'll either just get that cut out and re-welded, or might look at some options around a new exhaust system. Weirdly, the TD6 actually sounds really nice when you sort of remove all the gubbins. And yeah, although I don't want to make this like a yobby car, because the spec itself is so like old money, it would be nice to have a little bit of noise from it, but maybe an option down the line. So yeah, gonna do the oil change, have a nosy at that, and yeah, just also have a proper good look underneath it, because I've not been able to get her on a ramp yet, which I still won't have done, but at least she'll have a bit more room for me to get my head under, and hopefully won't crush me. So yeah, for those of you wondering, this is the noise. Let me see if I can get the window down. Don't know if you can hear that. It's very loud, annoying. Yeah, I don't know if it's just me overreacting and thinking it's incredibly loud, because every time I've looked at people, they've never actually been like, what is that noise? But yeah, I can hear it. I mean, there's a guy in a car in front of me in a Skoda Octavia, and he's looking at me. I don't know if it's because he thinks it's because I'm talking at this, he's giving me a weird look, or because it's so loud. I don't know. Anyway, we will get it sorted. While I've got you on this journey, I'm also trying to think what else I need to do to the car as like initial kind of maintenance / repairs. One big thing that is absolutely staring at me in the face is the crack in the windscreen, and that was a really annoying one. So genuinely, when I was driving this car back when I bought it, it was on quite a sort of old country lane, and I was behind, I don't know what I was behind actually. I think I was behind I wasn't behind a massive truck, it was some form of truck. I think it was a little Luton van truck thing. And we went past like I guess the entrance to a farm, which had a load of stones on it, and it just flicked a stone, and it hit. It wasn't even that loud, it hit right on, I guess, the black strip of the edge of the window. And when I went to go put some fuel in it, I just looked and saw this tiny fresh chip, and I was like, oh, that's so annoying. Thought, no worries, I'll just get Auto Glass or any other sort of window repair company to get it sorted. And in that time, probably a space of like 4 or 5 days, we had some really, really hot weather in the UK, and yeah, I came to the car and there's just this enormous crack. It genuinely goes to probably like past a quarter of the screen on this side, on the driver's side. And yeah, I was like, surely this was genuinely not here before. So I even spoke to my mate who came with me to get the car, and he was like, no, it definitely wasn't there. And since then it's just grown and grown. So yeah, I do need to get that fixed. It's going to be quite expensive. So that's another thing. What else have we got? Kind of thinking about getting the wheels refurbed. But part of me wants to go and do quite a lot of green laning / off-roading this winter. So I feel like it's a bit stupid to get them refurbed, then do that. So I might get those done next spring. I definitely want to put some new tyres on it. It's on some Avon tyres that seem fine. They've got plenty of tread, but as soon as winter comes near where I live, you ain't going anywhere in those. So yeah, I'm quite tempted to get some decent tyres. So just make sure I don't get absolutely clotted by a moron in a car. Yeah, I'm thinking General Grabber AT3s. I nearly got those on my Westminster, but I decided to sell it, so didn't go for those. But funnily enough, the guy who bought the car off me, Harry, he's put them on it and he swears by them. So yeah, I think AT3s are probably the way to go. I have seen some others. I can't remember what the Goodyear Wranglers, maybe those. I can't remember if that's the right one, so please tell me off if I'm wrong. But they seem like a proper off-roading tyre, which I've been in a friend of mine's Defender multiple times. He's got similar tyres and it is so loud and grim. So I think I'll go for more of an all-weather tyre than an off-roading tyre. If I get really into off-roading, we'll change that and go from there. But I think, yeah, an AT3 is probably the best way to go. What else is there? I don't think there's actually anything so far. And look, touch wood. I think this is cherry wood, so touch the cherry wood. I've been really fortunate in that there isn't any urgent things that need doing to this. I can't see any oil leaks, which Jesus, do you know any Land Rover that's old that doesn't leak? I don't. The Westminster leaked. So you could say this is already better already. Yeah, I've genuinely been really fortunate so far that there isn't anything urgent apart from what I've mentioned, which, you know, when you add it up, new tyres, new windscreen, blah, 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 it is still quite expensive. Yeah, there's nothing urgent that needs doing. These are all sort of nice to haves. Obviously the windscreen will need doing before the MOT, but the guy I bought this off literally got the MOT done, I think, the week before I bought it, so I've got plenty of time to get that sorted. Yeah, I think that's it so far. So, yeah, touch wood. It's kind of like nice to haves rather than need to haves right now. Right, we are nearly at Halfords. I really need to remember to pick up I think it's a 36mm or a 37mm socket for the oil filter housing, because my socket set doesn't go that high. I don't know why I'm telling you, like you're going to remind me, but yeah, need to get one of those as well. Don't know if it's you, but every time I go to Halfords or sort of anywhere that sells tools for cars, I just end up browsing and buying stuff that I really, really don't need. And that's another thing as well. I'm in a fairly tight car park, and I think I've said before, I find the L322 incredibly easy to drive. And you kind of forget how big it is, because it's so square, it doesn't actually feel that large because you can see every corner. But one thing you do notice is how bloody big it is when you go into an all parking space. I am already over the line there. Anyway, enough ranting. Let's go get me oil. Right, oil, lots of oil, and a few other bits and bobs. I'm really hoping that's the right oil filter. If not, I've been betrayed. Anyway, yeah, we've got all this jazzy stuff. So let's head to our next unit and get it done. So I had every intention of sharing the footage around the oil change and other service items we did that day, but I thought in isolation it was quite dull, so I'll save that footage for another video that I'm working on at the moment, and that'll be coming out fairly shortly, probably over the Christmas period, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, if you enjoyed the video, I hope you did. Don't forget to give it a like, and if you're not already subscribed to the channel, then do me a favour and hit that button. It really does help, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, guys.